Welcome back to the live. This is the first live that I have on this channel, so this is gonna be a process as we get through this. But we're just talking about some of the biggest topics in sports, some of the things that we have today. And the first comment we got: speak about the Giants. Um, the Giants are a very interesting team when I think we look at them this season. Now, what I will say before I talk about the Giants, I think that the biggest thing is that I think that they're a team who are in the toughest division in the NFL. Well, that's the first thing I can say because we have to look at the Cowboys, we have to look at the Eagles, but still, the Giants, a team that got better this offseason and did some things in the draft. And I think right now in training camp have some big time names showing up. So it depends on Daniel Jones. Now you got Saquon Barkley back. Interesting piece because we saw how the NFL is treating running backs. But I think when I look at that, that's a very interesting topic. Now, a bigger question would be when we talk about the Giants, defensively, who are going to be the standout players there? So I guess I can ask you that question back. What do you think about those defensive players? And really, guys, just throughout this, I want to know what are the biggest training camp storylines? What do you guys think about your team? Some of the players on those teams. Volcano. What's up, man? Memphis Grizzlies fan? Is that a Memphis Grizzlies fan there that we have in the chat? Is that a Memphis Grizzlies fan? I need to know. Interesting team. I think that the Memphis Grizzlies are a team that's being underrated in the offseason, though, talking about them. Looking at the NBA, especially the Western Conference, there are some teams who are stacked in the Western Conference, but I don't think enough people are talking about the Grizzlies. Now, when Ja comes back off his suspension, we still got to look. They brought in Marcus Smart, signed Desmond Bane to a massive contract. So this is a team who's still going to have that same type of thing in the next season. When I look at them, I think a very interesting team. Now, the bigger question is, who are the other teams going to be in the Western Conference? I think that we look at the Lakers, the Phoenix Suns, and I think the Phoenix Suns are one of the more interesting teams because I just got to see the Bradley Beal thing, with Kevin Durant, with Devin Booker. And Devin Booker also a guy who can facilitate, play some point guard when Chris Paul was hurt. Now he's on the Warriors, but when he was with the Suns, played some point guard there. So an interesting fit when we look at that team. I think that's something we have to monitor. 11-6 for the Giants. I think some people will come in the chat and say something about that. I don't know because you got to play Dallas 2 times a year. You got to play Philly 2 times a year as well. So an interesting team, like I said, but is this the year they go 11-6? Now, I think the thing with the Giants is that we look at last season and winning 10 games. Now, when we look at this team this year, I think that some people are viewing what happened last year as a fluke, but I don't think it's fair to say that. Chase Claypool has been killing training camp so far. Shout out King Venom for this comment. How well do you think he'll do this year? I think that really with Chase Claypool, I think he's actually going to be good this year. Now, the biggest thing, especially with last year, was that he got traded in the midseason. So with him and Justin Fields, it was kind of, we had to figure some things out. So now with the full training camp with Justin Fields on the Chicago Bears, I think it's safe to say Chase Claypool is going to be good for the team. Now, the bigger question is, what's his role going to be? Because I look at Darnell Mooney, who's still on that team. And then now we got DJ Moore. DJ Moore is going to get a lot of those targets. So it's kind of hard to say as far as stats, where he's going to be at, what he's going to do for the season. But I do think he'll have a good year. However we want to quantify a good year, I think he'll have a good year to answer that question. 11-6 on the low side. So I guess this is another Giants fan, 11-6 on the low side. Oh, like I said, it's going to be very tough. Now, it depends. I think you have Brian Daboll, a very good head coach on the Giants. But like I said, a lot of those games are going to be close. A lot of those games are going to be competitive. And especially, I think one thing we want to see is from that linebacker position, especially with last year, getting better stopping the run because you play the Dallas Cowboys. Tony Pollard's going to get the carries. You play the Philadelphia Eagles. They have a plethora of backs in the backfield. So stopping the run, like I said, drafted Deonte Banks, expected to be better right there. But it's going to be, if the Giants go 11-6, it's going to be a tough 11-6. It's going to be a hard out the mud 11-6. So, that's something to hope for. Who is going to throw him accurate passes? Now, I guess this is targeted towards Justin Fields and Chase Claypool. I think Justin Fields, especially what I've seen out of Justin Fields in training camp, I think it's safe to say Justin Fields is about to take that next step. Because we look at Justin Fields, and I watched a lot of Justin Fields film talking about him, but the biggest thing that I look at when I see Justin Fields, we got to remember, I think way too many people have forgotten what Justin Fields is. He slipped in the draft, and I think that he was a guy who could have easily been a top 10 pick, especially doing what he did. Now, we all remember the famous 7-on-7, the TV show, and then came out of that, dominated at Ohio State. And I think that has been forgotten because the Chicago Bears have struggled thus far with Justin Fields. But I don't think all of that is targeted towards Justin Fields. So regardless of what the team is this year, I think it's safe to say Justin Fields is going to take another step. It's safe to say that for me. Everyone drop them likes. Everyone drop them likes in the comments. Shout out to 843ENT. And I want to get back to this comment so far right here with Chase Claypool, because I think it's funny when we talk about Chase Claypool. It's 1 minute is something bad, and 1 minute is something good when talking about Chase Claypool. But I think consistently, I haven't changed about Claypool. And like I said, right now in training camp, I feel that it's way too early to swing one way, because if a guy goes out and catches 15 passes, if he gets 3 touchdowns in one training camp practice, that doesn't make him great. If he goes out there and drop passes, that doesn't make him bad. So I think that sometimes, because we haven't had football in a minute, we had the Hall of Fame game, but we haven't had true football in a minute. So right now, it's basically kind of the thing. We're just waiting. We're trying to, any news that we get, we're talking about that news and trying to get that out, making something bigger than what it is. So I think that's the biggest thing right now. But down below, I want you guys to comment, what are you most excited for this NFL season? I think a lot of interesting things in the NFL, but I want to know, what is the most exciting thing in the NFL season coming up? I think we see a lot of free agents, a lot of trades, different things going on, but I need to know, because the biggest thing that I would say is the most exciting thing for me when I look at the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl rematch. I think that's the game that I'm looking at, and that's the biggest thing for me, what I'm most excited for this season, because we think about it. If it wasn't for a holding call, if it wasn't for a bad turf, I think the Philadelphia Eagles feel very confident that they would have won that Super Bowl. Now, that's not to say that was the end-all, be-all when looking at it, but I think if you're an Eagles fan, you're going to say that was the reason that this happened. Although, Jalen Hurts came out to play that day, and Patrick Mahomes came to play. It was just a dominant game. Now, shout out to Volcano for this comment. I'm excited to watch the Ravens. Me too. I'm excited to watch the Ravens because I've watched a lot of Lamar Jackson film, and I think that, when we talk about Lamar Jackson, one thing is that a lot of people talk about Lamar Jackson and we say he hasn't had the true number one weapons. Well, when I look at that, I say, okay, there's some truth to that, but Lamar has some things that he has to fix on his own. That's not saying Lamar Jackson at this point in his career is a perfect quarterback, because you go and cut on the tape, you're going to see some inaccurate throws. You're going to see some misses right there. So, like I said, he's a very good quarterback. When he's hitting, he has top 5 potential when he's hitting. So I'm excited to watch that team. Zay Flowers, from what I've heard and what I saw, he's been popping in training camp. So very interesting player there. Now, what's your surprise team this season? Shout out to SCN for this comment. My surprise team for this season is the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I've been talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars for a long time, and I think that it's just, how are they going under the radar? Because we say, Aaron Rodgers, now he's on the Jets. He's going to be a great player. He's going to do all of these things. We look at all of these quarterbacks. Justin Herbert just got paid. But I think it's a guy down there in Jacksonville, and Trevor Lawrence, who has weapons. We look at this. We can go Christian Kirk. We can go Calvin Ridley coming off of the suspension. We could go Travis Etienne. We could go all of these players, but nobody has said anything about the Jacksonville Jaguars. So when this team comes up, when they pop off, I just want to say, coming back to now, that is my surprise team. Shout out to King Venom for this comment. For me, it's the Bears. I do think, when we say surprise teams, for me, it can go both ways. I think we say it's the Bears And that is a team who could surprise a lot of people. But I think that a lot of people are already kind of on the path of understanding this is a team that has hype. They look at everything that happened in the draft, especially bringing in Darnell Wright, Tevin Jenkins going back to guard. So I think if you really have been following football and you've been studying football, you expect the Bears to be a good team next year. I think I can confidently say that because I've been watching that team. So it really wouldn't be a quote unquote surprise to me if they're good. Now, surprise team is the Jets kicking it. I don't see how the Jets could be a surprise team because that's all I hear. I mean, I think I've heard the Jets more than the Cowboys this offseason, and that's the point that it's gotten to now. The Jets, they have a good defense. They have some solid weapons on offense, but I think we've taken it way too far. That's not me saying that the Jets are going to be a bad football team, but that's me saying that we still have to see it, especially with the offensive line. Now, in the Hall of Fame game, Mekhi Becton, their tackle, had to come off the football field in the Hall of Fame game. So this is a guy we're leaning on, and is a young player. We're expecting him to be a franchise tackle. He has to stay healthy. Dwayne Brown on the other side. He's on the far side of 30. So it's some questions with that team for me, and I don't think they will be a surprise team. I do think they'll be good, but how good? I'm not ready to say Super Bowl just yet. Nah, we got some laughing comments at the Jets. Shout out to King Venom. Do you think Spider-Man, aka Kyler Gordon, will have a breakout season as well? First off, we're right on the same page because Jaquan Brisker, and I have to get to a film breakdown for Jaquan Brisker because I've been talking about him for a minute. But I do, to answer your question, yes and yes, because I think Kyler Gordon, last season we saw him get played out of place some, and that was due to some injuries. That was due to some really having kind of a lack of talent at the position. But when we look at some of these guys this year, expecting them to get better, Tyreek Stevenson, a big-time draft acquisition, and I've heard good things out of him from camp. So Kyler Gordon, hopefully he gets back into that nickel position and can play right there, and I expect him to break out from that position. I believe it was maybe 2 days ago, I saw him have a training camp interception. And did you see his celebration, the spider celebration? If he does that in a game, I think that's going to be something very interesting. And getting back to Jaquan Brisker, he's a dog. And Jaquan Brisker is a dog. One of the players I looked at. I think one of the more, we look at the Chicago Bears and we talk about TJ Edwards. We talk about Tremaine Edmonds. But Jaquan Brisker, in his second year, is going to be a very good player for that team. So yes and yes. Number one seed AFC, number one seed NFC. Number one seed AFC. See, I'm going to be honest. Before, it was the Miami Dolphins. For me, that was a team that I was looking at because if Tua can stay healthy and you bring in Jalen Ramsey with that team and what they already have, a lot of people are scared to see the Miami Dolphins. Now, we say that, that's not the case, but this is a team who almost beat the Buffalo Bills in the wild card round without Tua. So I think that would have been my number one team. But right now, I'll probably have to take the safe route. Take the safe route and say Kansas City right now. It's just, until they prove us wrong, how can we throw Kansas City off of the throne? I think that's the case right there. And for the NFC, for me, see, this is where it gets very tough because as far as a team who I think is the best team, I have to go with the San Francisco 49ers. But when I talk about the San Francisco 49ers, we know the quarterback situation. So Brock Purdy, he's been playing in training camp, but I think still an interesting thing for me. I have to say they're the best team. I like the Philadelphia Eagles. They're very good offensively, defensively. But with the Eagles, they have some young pieces, and they also got new coordinators on offense and defense. So that's two things we're going to have to look at. And you say that the San Francisco 49ers, they got a new defensive coordinator as well. But Steve Wilks, I think he's familiar with the system in which he's going to run with that personnel. I mean, I think I could probably run defensive coordinator for the 49ers with the players they have right there. So those are my number one seeds in the AFC and the NFC. Now, another question who I have right here. I want to know what you guys think about the Anthony Davis deal. Did the Lakers make the right move extending Anthony Davis? Now, I have a video coming out on this as well, but something I want to talk about because I think it's very interesting. Is very interesting. We look at LeBron, he's on the older side now, and Anthony Davis has not stayed healthy. So, want to know what you guys think about that deal? Shout out to Volcano for the comment. The Titans, bro, they getting mad disrespect from the media. I agree. I agree. Now, I think a lot of the disrespect with the Titans in particular, I think it comes from the fact of Ryan Tannehill. Well, actually, I'm not going to say Ryan Tannehill because I think it comes from the fact of a combination of Ryan Tannehill, Malik Willis, and Will Levis. I think the combination of those three quarterbacks. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. When talking about this team, I don't think a lot of people have really actually watched Will Levis film. Now, his last season before he declared for the draft, it was some pretty rough things on film, but I think that is a very good team, especially defensively. Now, with the cornerback room, they were terrible in pass defense last year. That's something we're going to have to see get improved. But adding DeAndre Hopkins, I think it's a more significant move than people are crediting it for, because adding him along with the quarterbacks, along with Derrick Henry, I believe he's going to stay healthy this year. So already having Treylon Burks, that team is getting a lot of disrespect. Shout out to King Venom for this comment. What do you think about Jordan Love's training camp so far, and how well do you think he'll play this season? So for me, when I talk about Jordan Love, I think that right now he's been solid in training camp, but I don't want to get too far about training camp with Jordan Love. Now, some of the things I saw on film with Jordan Love, it left me very happy, and that's why I say they're in a better space. Referring to the Green Bay Packers, I say they're in a better space than people credit them for with Jordan Love. You know, it's not understanding you had Brett Favre, then you went to Aaron Rodgers, and of course, now getting into the Jordan Love era, it's not going to be the same. But I think having him, a lot of what he does this season and a lot of his stats, I think it's going to be predicated on some of those weapons. And he has some good ones. We have to credit that. Now, they drafted two tight ends. They drafted Tucker Kraft and they drafted Luke Musgrave. So they drafted both of those guys. Still got Christian Watson, a very good receiver, I would actually say. Romeo Doubs, pretty solid receiver. So looking at that, I think he'll be solid this year. Don't think he'll be a top 15 quarterback. I think he'll be right there somewhere in the middle. It's going to be one of those seasons where we have to figure out a lot about him because he just hasn't played that many snaps. I would say that. Volcano with this comment, I think the Titans are going to be in the mix like 7-5 or 7-6. So when you say this, is this mid-season or is this, what do you think the final record is going to be for the Titans? Now, I think that's an interesting record. And really, in their division, you know, in the AFC South, it's an interesting division, but I look at Jacksonville, like I said, my surprise team for next year. In 7-5 to 7-6, that's a pretty solid, pretty reasonable for that team. Now, one thing we have to understand with this team, they got Mike Vrabel. A lot of teams have good players, but a lot of teams don't have Mike Vrabels. So that's one thing I think. Even the games where we try to count the Titans out, they're going to be able to pull out a victory. Now, like I said, when you play Jacksonville in maybe Indianapolis, we have to see some things with that team. Some things we're gonna have to figure out. And I don't want to throw the Texans out there just yet. I think a very interesting team as well, but they're so young. That's what I would say with the Texans in that division. 843 ENT, Packers last in the division. I think, yes, I think they have to finish last in the division. Now, I feel like when we talk about that division and look at the Packers, look at some of the other teams, especially the Vikings, I think that I'll keep it honest. When we talk about the Vikings, a lot of people are looking at last year's record and they're saying this is going to translate. I just can't agree with that for the Vikings right now because you lose as many players as you lose. You have the things that are going on right now. And to say they're going to be an 11 to 12 win team when the Detroit Lions have gotten extremely better, when the Chicago Bears have gotten better, where are these wins going to actually come from? That's one thing I'm going to have to question. But, I mean, Kirk Cousins, we know what Kirk Cousins is right now. So it's hard for me to say with that division what it's going to be. But Packers, I do think, unfortunately, will be last in the division. And this is referring to the Tennessee Titans. You think they'll have a 10-7 record? I think that's fair to say. Pretty fair to say. Like I said, they don't have an abundance of talent. right now. Now they have some young guys, some guys who have to stay healthy, especially when I look at Caleb Farley, a guy who could be good, but he has to stay healthy for that team. So some things I'm looking at, I think the run game is going to be good. The passing game with DeAndre Hopkins, like I said, is going to be good. Have a pretty solid tight end in Shig, so they're going to be pretty solid. Now, my question is, who has your surprise player been in camp? The biggest training camp storyline. What do we think about these guys in training camp? Some of these players, 843 ENT, who's actually better, Vikings or the Lions? The Lions have more talent than the Minnesota Vikings. I think they should be better because I look at the Minnesota Vikings, and for one, they're kind of in that transition period where they don't want to tank, but I think it's safe to say they're not competing right now. And as hard as it is to say that, it's because I look at the team, you still got Justin Jefferson. I think we could say top 2 or 3 receiver in football right now. Brought in Jordan Addison, but defensively, now Brian Flores is the new defensive coordinator over there. But as far as talent, I think they're lacking in that department. The Lions have an abundance of talent. I can list off all of those players. Shout out to Volcano for the comment. Missed the playoffs barely. Do you think the Titans will really miss the playoffs though? Do you think really? Because like I said, we talked about this division. We still got Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a very good team, but they're going to be competing, I think, neck and neck with the Titans right there. So you're expecting Jacksonville to finish over the Titans. I'm inferring that based off that comment. I think it's pretty solid take. King Venom. Hopefully Carolina can give us a top 10 pick. I think that's going to be a hard one because, for one, I think Carolina has a lot of underrated talent. And for two, I would say when talking about that team, I think that we have to look at the division. When we talk about teams and records, we got to look at the divisions. And in that division, the New Orleans Saints, the Atlanta Falcons, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I want you to tell me what team in that division, out of all those players, is really great. Now, I think the Atlanta Falcons would be my sneaky team when talking about that division in particular. So it's going to be interesting. I think Carolina will be a pretty solid team, especially with Bryce Young. No. Okay, so this is, I think that you think the Tennessee Titans will finish below the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that's what that is. Shout out SCNs. How many wins for Panthers this season? Very interesting one. Very interesting one. We talk about how many wins will the Panthers have this season. I think when I got to go for my over and under, I would say somewhere around 8 to 9. Somewhere around 8 to 9. Now, I think the ceiling for that team would be 10 wins. The ceiling for the Carolina Panthers would be 10 wins. Like I said, a pretty solid team, but we look at some of the players, especially on offense, looking to add some more elite talent. I do like the receiving core. When I've been out there, the receivers have been making plays, but I think it's still early. Bryce Young is still building that connection with those receivers. So one thing I would say when talking about that team is, for a surprise training camp player, Terrell Lewis or Terrell Smith, I would have to say Terrell Lewis. But see, when you say Terrell Lewis has been a training camp surprise player, now you bring in Yannick Ngakoue. So it's kind of in the mix of that. How many reps will he continue to get? And I think that is, being a Chicago Bears guy, I think that's something that you've already looked at and talked about, because we have guys breaking out. And then I knew Ryan Poles. I knew he was still hunting another edge guy. And like I said, when talking about Yannick Ngakoue, a lot of teams in the NFL have been hunting Yannick Ngakoue, because just adding that player, in training camp, especially when you're a pass rusher, everybody wants you. Everybody wants you. And I think that Terrell Smith will be a guy who I would say is impressing. Expect him to get some more reps. Really got to watch him in preseason. Kicking in with Cloud. Panthers have an easy schedule, but it's up to them to take the advantage. Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think it's some games where you say we should win, but do you have to get to that point? We look at the Kansas City Chiefs. We look at the Philadelphia Eagles. When we look at the schedule and it's teams that we should beat, when you're kind of a young team and you have a young quarterback, I think some of the teams, what you think are on the schedule, it should be easy. We should just beat them and it won't be a competitive game. I think sometimes you lose some of those games, especially with a young team. Shout out to Fearless for the comments. Hot take: Lions go to the championship game this year but fall short and lose. A very interesting comment. I don't know, because looking at the landscape of the NFL, I don't know how hard of a take that is anymore. I think the Lions have so much hype when talking about the NFL, but we still have to see it. That's one thing I would say. We still have to see it, but that's a very interesting point. Like I said, now understanding this team, when Jameson Williams comes back, I think you have to see how impactful is he and how good will he be. Like I said, I have faith in him, but we still have to see a lot of things with this team. Got two good running backs in the backfield, a great offensive line, added a lot of players on defense. So the talent is there with that team. I would say the talent is there, especially. What's your favorite team, Volcano? Favorite team, Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers fan. You probably would have never guessed that or known that, but yes. And I think a very interesting team that a lot of people have counted out when talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, as you know, talking about a lot of teams, I'm not going to say the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl, but I do expect, especially with Mike Tomlin, a pretty solid team. Now, I think Carolina and Tampa Bay are going to rule that division for years. So that's a very interesting comment that you make when you say that Carolina and Tampa Bay are going to rule that division for years, and not so much with Carolina, with Tampa Bay. Do you think Tampa Bay is in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes and the Drake May sweepstakes? Right now, as they're currently constructed, I don't think they have their long-term answer at quarterback. But, drafted Kalijah Cansey. And really, Levante David's getting kind of old. So I think that's one thing we have to say. And also looking at Devin White, has had a down year. So, I'm really looking at Devin White is getting better, trying to get back to that linebacker we saw when they went to the Super Bowl that year. So, okay. 843 ENT, Saints win the South. Saints win the South. I cannot say that. I cannot say. Now, I love the Saints defense, and I'm going to have to get to a film breakdown with that defense because they do some different things. I think their defense, they play differently than a lot of teams in the NFL, but offensively, I'm not sold on Derek Carr. Seeing Derek, if you really watched Derek Carr last year, and to say the Saints are going to win the South, I think I can't see it. I cannot see it with that team. Like I said, I love the pieces, especially the receivers they have. Now, Michael Thomas, we know the past few years hasn't stayed healthy, but Chris Olave, he's a dog on the outside. You brought in Jamal Williams. He's another dog. So you got some players there, but I can't say they win the South right now. Smith Navon with the comment, best offseason move. Best offseason move. I would say very tough one. Actually, that is a very tough one. I would say probably a cop-out answer, but I would say the Miami Dolphins trading for Jalen Ramsey. I think with what they want to do on defense and what they're going to do when he gets back healthy, I think that he's underrated. He's had, when we look at these elite corners and they get beat, I think it's magnified so much. We have to understand, especially with teams who play man coverage, you're going to lose. But Jalen Ramsey, seeing what he can do, especially with them drafting Cam Smith, I think he's going to be back to form when he gets healthy. Don't count that team out. Don't count that move out. Volcano. Shout out to D1 for you with the donation. Carolina Panthers for life. Hey, I was out there again today. And I think today with the training camp, they were more competitive. Now, one thing I will say about the Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young, I would say out of everything that I've heard and that I've saw, especially compared to yesterday, had a rougher day today. Now, when I say a rougher day for that team, I think that we got to pause a little bit, because when I say rougher day, I'm referring to the defense stepping up. A lot of players on defense made big-time plays today, so it's not to say worry about Bryce Young, but be happy about the defense. They had a very good day today. They were physical, flying around, making plays in coverage. So that's what I would say as far as today for that team. Volcano with the comment, if Tampa Bay gets Caleb Williams, yes. Now, interesting question, if they get him, will his weapons still be there? Because when I look at Tampa Bay, I think they're going to be, as bad as to that, they're going to be a selling team. We look at Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Somebody's going to want those guys, especially with injuries and things around the NFL. By the time we get to the middle of the season, will those top-tier receivers still be on that team? But Caleb Williams, he's a dog. I don't think needs an introduction. If you've been following football in general, you don't even have to watch a snap of college football, and you know who Caleb Williams is right now. Another comment, Saints are overrated. They got to play the number one rush defense in the league, week one Titans. Yes. Yes, I agree. I agree because the Titans a very good defense as far as stopping the run. When we say that, and then the Saints, they're a team. Now we know they're gonna run the football, so I would say they are a tad bit overrated. But as far as overrated, I don't know is how many people are talking about the Saints right now. Like I said, I love the defense, but I would say as far as the team in general, kind of overrated right now. King Venom with another comment. What's the most improved team? The most improved team. I have to say the Lions. I have to say the Lions with what they've added. I think some very significant players, especially on defense. Now, I think that's an interesting question. When you say most improved team and we talk about teams, I think I'm looking at units. One thing that I would say I'm kind of looking at as far as offense and defense, most improved team, we probably have to say as far as win-loss record, we probably have to say the Jets. Because, I mean, they bring in Aaron Rodgers. Like I said, I don't know if that equals Super Bowl right now, but I do think it's a significant of a move. We have to say it's very improving for that team. I would say that is the most improved team, but I like what the Lions did on defense. That's what I would say. Unknown Templeton. Do you think Rajon Wright is going to come in the NFL on the same level as Sauce? No, sir, I do not. I don't think anybody will come in the NFL on the same level as Sauce. That's not to say Rajon Wright is a bad player. That's not saying that at all. But Sauce Gardner is different. I mean, to do what he did in college, people still doubted him. They still doubted, can he come to the NFL and do this same type of thing? And the answer was yes. And I mean, going against Garrett Wilson every day for him, that's getting him better. So he's going to be a very good player, but not on the level of Sauce. Not on the level of Sauce. We can't say that right now. D1 for you. Shout out him for the comment. Appreciate you. Hey, Carolina Panthers, they showed me some great things at camp. I mean, looking at the team, I think that especially the secondary, because we talk about the Carolina Panthers and we talk about the secondary and also the pass rush. I think especially today, the pass rush was getting home. Bryce Young, he scrambled. Now, we know when you're in practice, you can't hit the quarterback. I think we all know that. But on a lot of those plays, he would have been sacked. We see some plays where he's improvising, some plays where he's doing different things. We have to call him up as sacks. But as far as keeping the play going, it's kind of like when we have a running back and he gets tackled at the line of scrimmage, they're taught and they're coached in practice to run to the end zone. Even if they're tackled, run through the end zone, break through the tackle. So I think the defensive line, cornerback room, pretty great day. Shout out to for the comment. Who has the best defense in the league this year? San Francisco 49ers. I think because when we look at the 49ers, they have a lot of things on all three levels for that team. I mean, linebacker, best linebacker in the game. I don't even think it's. I mean, Roquan Smith, Matt Milano, I can name some guys. It's not close to Fred Warner because while he's great at the run game, he's great in the passing game. He really looks like a big safety in the middle of the field at linebacker. So adding that, Nick Bosa, Defensive Player of the Year, I think they have the best defense. And I think they had the best defense last year as well. So I would say that. Unknown Temptation. Who do you think the Panthers 3-star? This is a very interesting comment. Now, I think right now the Panthers have. Okay. I'm gonna answer this question. I'm gonna answer this question for you. I would have to say right now, on the outside, I think Terrace Marshall Jr. starts for this team. I think that's one that we can take down. I think Jonathan Mango, although he was a high draft pick, I don't see him starting early on in the season. I would have to say probably DJ Chark. And then we talk about that slot receiver position. Adam Thielen looked very good today. Demir Bird looked very good today. But they still got Laviska Shenault. They have some pieces. I would say Adam Thielen because he doesn't have the big playability, but he's very good underneath in the intermediate passes. So I think those are probably have to say 843 ENT, who will have the better season, Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers? To answer that, I would say Aaron Rodgers. Now, we look at, and really with the Denver Broncos, they've had some unfortunate things. Tim Patrick being injured, but Aaron Rodgers, he has the weapons. I mean, Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, right? He has guys that he's already familiar with. And then on top of that, they still added McCole Hardman. I think Aaron Rodgers has a bounce back season. Now, with last season, you wonder because his receivers weren't terrible last year. I think that in the later half of the season, they started to catch on being young receivers. So that's one thing we could say. And you really wonder, why did he not have MVP Rodgers season? And the truth of it is, I don't think he was the same guy. But seeing him so far in New York, it looks like he has a different level of commitment, like he really truly wants to be there. And I think that's going to add into him being better this season. Rank JC. Shout out to Unknown Temptation for the comment. Rank JC among DBs. That's a very interesting comment right there. I think so. I'm gonna go down the list, and then I'm gonna have to stop when I think a guy that I can't name is better than JC. So I think number one right now, I would say 1A and 1B, but this is 1 and 2. So number one, I would go Patrick Surtain. Number two, I would go Sauce. Number three. There are so many good corners that I look at, and I mean, Xavier Howard is still a very good corner. Some other guys that I could think of, I would say, because you can't name all of the DBs right now off the top, I would say he's top 10 safely, probably in the back half of the top 10 though. He's in top 10, but in the back half of the top 10. And really, when you rank JC, it's kind of hard because being consistently healthy. I think the talent, he's top 5 as far as talent, but has to stay healthy, and he'll be ranked higher amongst those DBs. And really, in training camp, they haven't thrown the ball a lot at him at all. I mean, we kind of already expect that with JC, but just kind of seeing it in person, nobody wants to try JC. You kind of understand why with the corner that he is. Shout out to King Venom for the comment. Do you think the Vikings are on the verge of a rebuild? Because to me, no matter what they do, Kirk Cousins isn't going to win them Super Bowl. Do I think they're on the verge of a rebuild? No. Do I think they should be? Yes. That is how I will answer that question, because I agree. I don't think Kirk Cousins will take them to a Super Bowl. And really, they cut Dalvin Cook. They cut Eric Kendricks, 2 good players, understanding that at this point in their career, do they really want to pay them that amount of money? I would say that the answer is probably no right now, but I would say they have to, because sooner or later they're going to realize that Kirk Cousins isn't getting any younger. You still got Justin Jefferson. He's going to want a quarterback, or he's going to want out. You got Jordan Addison, but defensively, I keep going back to the defense. I don't see talent that is going to be at the top of the division, at the top of the NFC. Shout out to Unknown Temptation again. Do you think Derwin James is the best safety in the league? I think it's very close. I would probably give the edge to Minkah Fitzpatrick. Now, when we talk about, I think Derwin James is very complete. This is why he may have the edge over Minkah Fitzpatrick, because of the run game. He's way more physical. Now, Minkah Fitzpatrick, he turns the football over a lot. So that's one thing. It really depends on what kind of safety you want. What kind of taste do you like? As a safety, do you want a hard-hitting enforcer who can also cover? Or do you want a guy who's going to lack some things in the run game, but he gets you picks? He gets forced fumbles. He gets that type of thing. So I think he's top 2. I think he's top 2 on any given season. He could be 1. I would say that. Another comment, I'm glad you brought up Hayden Hurst. I'm extremely glad you brought up Hayden Hurst. Today, Hayden Hurst could not be blocked. Hayden Hurst could not be covered, should I say. They couldn't do anything with Hayden Hurst on defense. I mean, in the red zone and team, and really, he's faster than I thought. Seeing it in person, he's also bigger than I thought for a tight end. So a very good tight end. I would rank him. I'm gonna go with tiers. I would say he's not up there, with George Kittle, with Travis Kelce. He's not in that elite tier. I would say he's somewhere in the middle type tier. He's going to be a good tight end, but if we look at any given year, a guy comes out in the draft, Brock Bowers. I think Brock Bowers has that elite potential. When we look at tight ends right now, Hayden Hurst, he's a good player. He's going to be one of the better targets for Bryce Young. But if you see an upgrade, I think he's an upgradable player. Do you understand what I'm saying? As far as that, he's not really a need. He doesn't, make a need for this team. You're good at tight end. You're set. Bryce Young has a security blanket, but you can upgrade from him because he's not that elite next level type tight end. So that's what I would say about Hayden Hurst as far as right there. Some interesting things. Now, this is an interesting question that I have. I want to know who's on the preseason watch radar. We were 2 weeks in the training camp. Who are the guys in the preseason who are going to step up? Just throw some names out there. See if I know about these guys. Some interesting things that I have. Some questions that I have when talking about this. Shout out to King Venom for the comment. What do you think Cole Kmet's ceiling is? Cole Kmet's ceiling, I would say statistically, probably around 800 yards, 800 to 900 yards in a given season. Now, looking at, because they have the receivers, and you question how much will he get targeted? Will he have the big play ability? I think he does have the big play ability, but will he have those big play opportunities with Chase Claypool, with Darnell Mooney, with DJ Moore? DJ Moore is going to get a lot of targets. And you got to remember, they still run the football. So he's a good tight end. He can also block, but in the receiving game, statistically, I think his ceiling is probably a Pro Bowl. I don't see Cole Kmet as an all-pro player, but I can see him as a Pro Bowler in a good season. Shout out to Unknown Temptation again. Who do you see being more successful, Jordan Travis or Jaden Daniels? I really like Jaden Daniels. I think Jordan Travis is pretty good, but Jaden Daniels is special. I watched some games about him, especially watching Harold Perkins, seeing them play against those guys. So now with Jaden Daniels, I think that when he comes into the NFL, the question is, as far as a passer, can he become elite as a passer? I think he's a very good passer right now, but I look at Jaden Daniels, I see a guy who can improvise, make plays on the run, different things. So I would have to go with Jaden Daniels. I would say that's one of my guys in college football. Lucky Mango shot in with the comment. What is your favorite team? So, okay, I got two answers for that. For the NFL, Pittsburgh Steelers are my favorite team. And for the NBA, the Miami Heat are my favorite team. So those are my two favorite teams. Haven't talked about them that much, but I do think both good teams in the NBA and the NFL. Those are my favorite teams. Kicking it with Clout. How do you feel about Darren Waller this year being added to the Giants? I think that, especially with the offensive coordinator and the head coach, knowing how they've used tight ends, Darren Waller being one of the best tight ends in the game, both athletically and production. If he stays healthy, he's going to be, again, one of the top 3 tight ends in football. That's what I say about that move right there. Feel very confident in him as a player. But like I said, has to stay healthy. Feel very good about that, though. 843 ENT. Preseason watches Deonte Banks. I agree. A very talented corner. And I think that first off, Deonte Banks was never supposed to fall to the New York Giants. He was supposed to be going a long time before the Giants drafted him. But when we talk about these players and these high draft picks, my question comes back to how much will they play? And maybe early, maybe in the first game or second game, we see those guys on the football field, but we still got to see some of the guys who are trying to make the team. So that's a question that we talk about right there. But I would say he is on preseason watch, a very talented player on a team who's looking for him to contribute early. Smith Navon, shout out for the comment. CJ Stroud is a must watch in preseason. Yeah, I would say. I think for me, my must watch is Anthony Richardson. Just because of the talent. We have to look at the talent, and if he ever hits that ceiling, he's going to be something we've never seen before. And, we look at Cam Newton. I can name the quarterbacks. I've done it before. But I think Anthony Richardson is that guy out of all the people that I talk about who can be a next-level player. So I'm watching him in the preseason. But really, watching all of those young quarterbacks. Shout out Kicking It with Clout for the comment. Definitely him and Tank Dell. CJ Stroud and Tank Dell, yeah. I think with training camp, those two guys have had a great connection. Tank Dell, and I made a video about Tank Dell talking about him, just seeing that he's not the biggest guy, but for how they're going to use him, I don't really think that matters. I don't think he's going to be the outside X receiver that's asking to go get 50-50 balls, beat 50 yards down the field against press coverage. I don't think he's in that role. You use him, jet sweeps, different types of things, slants, slot receiver. He can really be valuable for that team at that position. So one of the players I'm watching, and we think about it, he was one of the top receivers as far as receiving yards in college football. So you produce, and albeit at Houston, that's what some people are going to say. It's not SEC. It's not that team. But I think being that productive, even though you're not the biggest, you're a good player. And really, the biggest thing with him is that he ran a lower 40 than we expected coming out of the draft combine. So I think that made him fall. People are already trying to knock him, saying that his size is not ideal for the NFL. And then we say, okay, he doesn't run the 4.3. But one thing I will say though, he looks like a low 4.3, a high 4.3 actually. He looks like that when he runs on the football field. And we say game speed versus 40 speed. It's a very different thing. And that's a guy who I would say that even Jalen Hyatt, a guy who came into the draft combine, we expected a 4.2 off the bat, did not run the 4.2. Some people say, whoa, is this guy really as fast as we thought? And yes, he is. I will tell you that confidently because I've seen it in person. He is that fast. Jaden Carter, definitely. So this goes back to preseason watch. I agree because I think that with the Philadelphia Eagles and with the players they already have, Jordan Davis, they still got Fletcher Cox, still got Milton Williams. So him being on that team, if he's the same guy that he was at Georgia, I mean, the best defensive player on the best defensive team in the nation, not just the SEC, not just that, the best defensive player on the best defensive team in the nation, I think he is a guy that we should and could potentially see flash, especially in but really in the regular season. I think that it's going to transition because he is a very good player. And really the thing with him, had the preseason things, had the draft combine things, when we look at it and say, okay, some red flags there, has to stay in shape. I think that now being with the Philadelphia Bulldogs, should I say, because they drafted all of his teammates. So that's going to add into that. Him being, firm, staying consistent with that team, I think he is a player to watch. SCN. Offensive and defensive rookies of the year. Very interesting comment. And shout out for this comment because that is something I want to touch on. Now, I'm going to go NFC first. I got to say, really, if it were up to me, if I had to go with that, I would say Bijan Robinson. That is what I would really say because I think he's going to be productive. Now, having him with Arthur Smith, having him with that team who loves to run the ball, they were second in rushing attempts last year. So having all of that, I think he's going to be the most productive rookie offensively in the NFC, but they always give it to quarterbacks. So if I had to put on the, an analyst hat and look at how are they going to do it as far as voters, it's probably going to be Bryce Young. But I would say, to me, Bijan Robinson. Now, defensive rookie of the year, a very interesting one. Looking at those NFC defensive rookies, I would say, now it's tough to say we go Seattle back-to-back years, but I have to say Devon Witherspoon. My favorite defensive player coming out of this draft is Devon Witherspoon. They drafted him there with Seattle. That's going to be a very good, interesting defense. Not a lot of people are talking about Seattle, but my defensive rookie of the year, and I think he'll get the vote because we see corners, Sauce, Tariq Woolen, we see that there now. We're voting with corners. We're seeing corners, and they have the personality. Devon Witherspoon is a guy who's going to get in your face, talk trash, and be nasty about it. He's that type of guy in the secondary. Now, AFC, I would say, I think CJ Stroud. It's hard to say not CJ because the quarterbacks. We know how the NFL is, and I think with the quarterback, he's going to be very productive with that team. He's going to be pretty solid. So we have to go with him in the AFC. Now, defensively, this is a very interesting one. If I had to go defense for the AFC, Christian Gonzalez. I don't know how much you've heard that name for, big-time rookie hype. Christian Gonzalez, a very good corner, fell in the draft. The New England Patriots were never supposed to get him. That is a guy that I'm looking at, especially in the AFC. And what I'm hearing out of training camp, he's already showing that he could be locked down on the number one. So that's my guy right there. Shout out to Kicking It With Cloud. Do you feel Dak Prescott is holding the Cowboys back? Yes, I do. It's because we say I don't. It's hard to say Dak Prescott has not held them back because I look at the San Francisco 49ers game and I did a film breakdown on the defense. The defense played lights out in that game. Dak Prescott didn't show up. Had the picks and had different things going on. He didn't show up. He did. I don't know where he was. He wasn't at the game. I I don't know where he was. He was not at that game versus the San Francisco 49ers. And it's kind of been back-to-back years. Jerry Jones, Mike McCarthy, Dan Quinn, they're hyping this team up. We see everything going on. And you get in the playoffs, fall on your face. It's really been that consistently. So I think he is holding them back. Queen Brown, who's your favorite player of all time? My favorite player of all time. It has to be a linebacker. You know, it has to be a linebacker. Love defense. I would say Luke Kuechly. Luke Kuechly is my favorite player of all time out of all of the players I've watched. And he retired early, so we didn't get to see what he could really be throughout the duration of a full career. But in the short spurts that we saw, I mean, rookies of the year, defensive player of the year, all the awards, Luke Kuechly is my favorite player because not just how he played on the football field, but how he approached the game. It's so much bigger than just getting on the field and making a play. And how he approached the game, for one, he loved the game. For two, he studied the game more than anybody. I'll never forget calling out plays for the offense. I mean, in their face, they're calling audibles. He's calling what they're checking to. You have to watch an extreme amount of film to not only know the play that they're coming out in initially, but understanding what they're checking into. You know all the audibles and everything for this offense. So nobody prepared like Luke Kuechly. I mean, we got some safeties, Ed Reeds, Troy Polamalu's, but nobody prepared like Ed Reed. And my favorite player is not going to be a quarterback. I would say that. I don't get the fascination with the quarterback position. I know quarterbacks win games, and that's what a lot of people are going to say when I say I don't really care for quarterbacks. I think quarterbacks are very important. Let me say that. But favorite player, it's never going to be a quarterback for me. Even with Patrick Mahomes, even as good as he is, I never said that's my favorite player. He's a guy who makes me want to watch football. Now, he does make me want to watch football, but you watch Luke Kuechly. You want to watch every play, every snap from Luke Kuechly, just seeing how does he do it? How does he come from one sideline to the other? How does he do all of that? How does he read the plays like that? That's the type of thing I look at. 843 ENT. What is Trevor Lawrence ceiling? I think Trevor Lawrence's ceiling is the best quarterback in the league. I think because we got to remember, we say, Anthony Richardson was generational. We say Bryce Young is a mini Patrick Mahomes. We say all of these different things. Even with Malik Willis, he fell to the third round, but he had hype as well because he could do a lot of things and had physical traits. Trevor Lawrence has the mental capacity to be a great quarterback, and he has the physical tools. It's not a throw he can't make. It's not a defense in which now he had 4 interceptions in that wild card game. I'll say that, but it's still not a defense that he can't read. I mean, a special quarterback, and now with Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, now you got Calvin really coming back, got ETN in the backfield. His ceiling is the best quarterback in the league. I firmly say that because we look at Joe Burrow. I think that any given season, if Patrick Mahomes has a down season, who we're going to go to? We're going to go to Joe Burrow. And then if both of them have a down season, or if both of them were to lose, what team could you see in the AFC beating them? I think Jacksonville, they lost 10 points last year. They did not lose. They did not get blown out by the Kansas City Chiefs. So I say that, and looking at that, you say, okay, we look at Josh Allen. He's right around the corner. Trevor Lawrence is right around the corner. I think his ceiling is the best in the league. Shout out to kicking it with Clout with the comment. Now being fully healthy and being able to play a full season, what type of year can you expect with Chase Young? I just don't know, because even if he's fully healthy, okay, let's say hypothetically, we turn injuries off. We can never do that in the real world, but we turn injuries off. I think that he can get you double-digit sacks. Coming out of college, he was one of the best edge rushing prospects that I've ever seen. And I mean, that's up there with Nick Bosa. That's up there with Myles Garrett, TJ Watts. He was one of the best. Talent-wise, he can do the same things. I think that's what we look at and we have to say. Remember, number 2 overall. He's that guy that can do that type of thing. So a ceiling gets you double-digit sacks, but it all comes down to, will he be the guy who can get you 18 to 20? I think he can, but will I bet on that? I would not bet on that. So I would say 10 to 12 sacks is what I can expect from Chase Young, hypothetically. Shout out to Smith Navon for the comment. Has Josh Allen reached his ceiling and is he on the decline? Has he reached his ceiling? I don't think he's reached his ceiling simply because of the fact that they don't run the football. Because, I mean, if they run the football, it really makes a difference in the game. It's so much impact that they will have if they just decide to turn around and hand it off. Now, I added some running backs this year, so we're going to see that. But I think that he's leaned on way too much. When you drop back 40 to 50, even 60 if it gets to a time in a game, you're going to throw some bad throws. You're going to have picks. And that's why he's so turnover worthy, because he's put in the worst positions. We look at Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow. Rarely do they get put in the same positions that we see Josh Allen get put in consistently week in, week out. So I don't think he's reached the ceiling. I want to see, with a more balanced offense, what can he be. I think he's a guy who can challenge to get to the Super Bowl if they balance it out. Now, added a tight end, like I said, added some running backs. We're going to see that this year. But right now, we truly do not know just yet. Now, we're getting to the end of this here, about 5 more minutes. So, rapid fire. Let me guys know what you think. What are the questions right now? What are some of the biggest things we have in the NFL? Or it could just be anything. Anything about questions about players, NBA, Anthony Davis, Aaron Rodgers, Damian Lillard. What do you guys think? What's going on right now with sports right now in here? Some of the questions we have. And I think one thing I would say that I'm very interested in is that I want to see the playoffs this year, because I know right now, and this was just the same thing last year, we had all of these expectations for these teams. We said all of these players would be great. And then injuries, things have happened. Players not producing like we thought they would. And then we get into the season. Now we're seeing what some of these players have done. Now we're seeing what some of these players can't do. So I think right now we have a lot of things that we expect, and rightfully so. We're hyped about the season. We haven't seen football in a long time. But when the season comes, we know right now basically everything in which we're seeing is hype. It's really hype. So that's why I can't wait to get back into the season, to get to the film breakdowns, to talk about all of these things and really get to the X's and O's and break down my recaps like we are right now with these players and with these teams, because it's all going to change. It's a team that nobody's talking about right now, that I'm not talking about right now, that is going to be in the playoffs, that is going to shock the world in the NFL, in any sport. There is just, in the offseason, we do not know. Shout out to Queen Brown for the comment. Will Anthony Davis finish his career with the Lakers? Will he finish his career with the Lakers? I would say yes, unless he doesn't turn it around and he continues to get injured. I can see them, even though they extended him, and I have a video coming out on this very soon talking about this topic. But right now, I think it's too far for me to say no, because if they move Anthony Davis, for one, you got to understand, they're going to want extreme compensation back for him. He's a top 75 player. He's one of the best top 5 players in the NBA when healthy, when he's clicking, when he's on the court and he's not playing like he's not there. So understanding that, I think he's too great of a player to lose. I don't see how they would just willingly lose Anthony Davis. That's one thing I would say. I believe yes when answering that question. Now, are there any more questions for anything? Lions, Bears, Panthers, Giants, Vikings, Packers, anything that we want to talk about before we get out of here with these teams? Another comment, 843ENT, surprise trade in the NBA next season. Surprise trade. Looking at the landscape of I would have to say Zion. Because looking at some of the things and how this team is built, also, I think the Pelicans are a good team, but do the Pelicans really want to deal with this that much longer? Because he has not been on the basketball court for one reason or another. I think that we look at GMs, we look at ownership. We're in the business of winning championships. Although Zion, he's going to bring tickets, he's going to dunk, he's going to do 360s, he's going to do things people shouldn't physically be able to do at that size. You got to be there. The best ability is availability, and he just has not been that available thus far. So I could see a reason where they out him. Now, the last comment we're going to get to, kicking it with clout, with Jaylen Brown showed the Celtics that he deserves that contract. I think he already deserves the contract. And I'm going to say this for one reason, because you get all of that money. It's because it's so hard. And I think where the Celtics, they have not broke through yet. They lost in the finals to the Golden State Warriors. They have not broke through just yet. But I think that they got there. They got how many teams have not got there? How many teams have not seen the NBA Finals? How many teams haven't won anything? So him and Jason Tatum, they're young. I don't see why you would willingly break up that duo. Now, I understand trying to try something new. You have Tatum. You believe he's a quote-unquote superstar up there with the best in the game. I just don't see why you move off of it right now, even though it hasn't worked, because you don't want to take it for granted. You trade Jaylen Brown, and now you're the 4th and 5th seed in the East. Now you can't get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think he already deserves it. And I think they're going to continue to be a good team. Now, are they going to win a championship? I do not know. But Jaylen Brown is an important part of why they have been winning thus far. And he's going to be an important part of why they will continue to win. That's a very good basketball team. So I would say that, and that's going to wrap it up for the live stream. The last comment that we got to, and that we have talked about a lot of things today. Also, coming out with the Anthony Davis video very soon. Going to come out with another video recapping the Carolina Panthers training camp. And then we're going to get back to some things. Some different teams around the league. Training camp is going on still next week. Preseason coming up. Get ready for those film breakdowns. That's what I'll say. But that's going to end it for this live stream today. Let's get out of here. Thank all you guys for watching. Don't forget to like it up. We out.